Hey guys, I'm gonna jump right into it today. I tried to do this video with the rotating assembly video last week and I didn't realize how detailed I was gonna get. It was getting to be way too long for a YouTube video, so I had to split it in two. The main benefit to that is that kind of halfway through that video, I decided I was going to replace my pistons with the Euroamp pistons. And so since then I've ordered 7 more pistons from Euroamp. So in addition to everything that I've already recorded, I'm going to show you guys any variation in diameter and weight between the Euroamp pistons. So if you guys are trying to get these balanced, you can see how consistent you can expect them to be. And if you guys are doing any boring work, if you're trying to avoid doing any boring work, you'll see if they're pretty consistent on diameter. I've not checked that yet, but I kind of expect them to be. The only thing I need to talk about first is last week in the video, I told you guys that the factory pistons were forged. I found a couple of different forums that said that they were forged. They all referenced other places that they talked about it, but the only thing I can see from a factory vehicle that had forged internals was a special edition custom built F-Type that they released in like 2016 for a short run. And I think they were talking about that engine and they just extrapolated that that meant all of them had forged internals, and that's not the case. So Kolb & Schmidt produced these. They're cast pistons that they put in the factory engines. To add to the confusion, Kolb & Schmidt makes cast and forged internals for these engines. So it just goes to show that it's really hard to find really good information on these engines because there's a lot of guesswork and stuff that's accepted as fact that isn't true on them. So I just wanted to talk about that first. I did leave that video up, but I put a disclaimer in the description. I don't really feel like that is that important of information since we're just talking about what was originally in the engine, so I didn't take it down, but I wanted to talk about that before we got started today. So with that, I will go ahead and start unboxing these aftermarket pistons and do a side-by-side for you guys. Let me see, I gotta keep track of all this because it'd be really easy for me to forget which one I'm talking about. This is the this is the Euroamp piston. This is the eBay piston. The eBay piston is a supercharged piston. And I'll show you here in a minute why I got this. And I'm glad I did, because there's a problem that people have talked about on these, and then I've had other people that have said that it wasn't an issue on them, so I wanted to look at it, and I already see a problem with that, so I'll talk about that here in a minute. And then this is the Amazon piston. And I'm honestly already, the Euroamp piston actually looks and feels a lot better, like it's finished a lot better. So on this supercharged piston, if you guys can see, actually they're not identical, but if you guys can see the profile of these two piston skirts, they don't look identical, but they're the same. This is a problem that I've seen people talking about on these Chinese supercharged pistons. So let me go over here to the block real quick. I want to show you guys what I'm talking about here. So if you guys can see down here in the valley, so you can see kind of where I'm looking at it up here through the bottom of the engine, there are blank plates in here on the naturally aspirated engines. If this were a supercharged engine, it would have oil cooling jets that are installed there that spray oil on the skirts of these pistons when they come down. So the reason I ordered this supercharged piston, even though I'm working on a naturally aspirated engine, is because of these skirts. I'll find a picture here and show you what this skirt should look like. There should be a relief cut in the corner of this, so when this piston comes to the bottom of its stroke, that cooling jet sits right here, and there is a clearance that's supposed to be cut out of this piston. I'm assuming that there's not an issue with this actually running into that jet unless you're able to bend it out of the way, because I've not seen anybody say that. But these are supposed to have a cutaway in them for those cooling jets on the supercharged engines. So I kind of thought that this was no longer an issue on these pistons because all of the posts that I saw complaining about this were about 5 years old. But this is it's December of 2025, and I just got this piston that does not have the relief cut in it. So if you guys are ordering supercharged pistons, if that is something, I mean, I can't imagine that there's no reason that they cut that cutaway into it. So pay attention to where you're ordering them from and make sure you get one that's got that cut in it. Okay guys, so here are the pistons up close. If you guys can tell, it's kind of hard to see on the factory one because there's so much crap in it, but all of the numbers that are cast in these are the same. With the exception of the supercharged piston, which I don't have sitting on the bench here right now, but where these all say B2 at the bottom, the supercharged piston says 8.2. I don't know if there is a different casting that they're using for those or if that is a typo. But you can look at these and see pretty clearly, like the web design on these two pistons is different. The font that they used on the casting is different. If you look at these kind of shelves here, the Euro amp one is a lot more pronounced. It looks almost identical to the factory one, where this, let me think, this is the Amazon one. These are a lot more sloped. That's probably kind of hard to tell in the video, but there is a big difference on the inside of these, which is what is making me think these are almost certainly different castings. So if you guys can look inside here where the wrist pin is, on this Amazon one, you can see that's kind of dull. It's just not finished real well. It's just not, you know, if you look at this Euro amp one, this is like a mirror finish. You know, I don't have burrs all over the place like I do on this Amazon one, and that is just kind of, that's the case across the board. These things are, the Euro amp ones feel a lot better. They look a lot better. It's hard to tell in videos, I know, so you just kind of have to take my word for it a little bit, but everything on the Euro amp one feels a lot better than the other two do. Now, I will say all of the wrist pins, I mean, not that there's really a whole lot of difference that there could be in those, but they are all identical. All right, my micrometer's in inches. I'll give you what the inch specs are, and then I'll convert them on the website here, or on the video, I mean. My factory pistons were a little bit worn. I've not actually checked this dimension, but I've dropped these pistons in there, and they had about between 0.30 and 0.35 cylinder piston to cylinder wall clearance. So that is 3.641 and a half. Here I've got 3.640. Here I've got 3.641 and a quarter. I'm gonna check this one again because I'm not sure if I got that right. This really isn't something I should be doing in a hurry for a video. I should have done this off camera. Let's see what I've got. 3.641 and a quarter. All right, so the Euro amp one is just a little bit bigger than these two, just by hair. They all have about 0.35 millimeter piston to cylinder wall clearance. My factory pistons had about 0.45. I think a couple of them had 0.50 millimeters of piston to cylinder wall clearance. So, I mean, obviously, you can see this. There's obviously some wear on my factory piston. But I don't know if that is, I'm gonna have to check the spec because I don't remember off the top of my head if that is actually under spec. It may be that they run these things tighter. There are a lot of people that have told me that they're using these pistons in high performance engines that they're building upwards of 700 horsepower and they've not had any problem. Which reminds me, I want to check. Give me just a second, I'll be right back. I want to check something. Okay, One of the complaints on these pistons that was really common about 4 or 5 years ago when they first started turning up was that they had zero, they were symmetrical. They had no offset. So that's 56.48. And that is 58.01. So they've got 1.5 millimeters of offset. One of the things that they complained about on these pistons is that they had no offset on the wrist pin, and they had really terrible piston slap on these early on. That was the Amazon one. Let's check the Euro amp one here. Wow, that feels a lot better on this Euro amp piston. Let's see, 58.01. 56.44. So again, about 1.5 millimeters of offset. Try the Supercharged piston from eBay. 58. 56.5. So all of these have 1.5 millimeters of offset. That doesn't necessarily mean that any one of these that you buy is going to, but of all of these, the only one that I would consider a semi-reputable seller is Euroamp. And they're all pretty much the same price. I don't see any reason I wouldn't be buying them from Euroamp if I was putting pistons in this truck, because I know they're gonna, well, I don't know that they're gonna stand by it, but they have a pretty good reputation. I don't see anybody that has said that Euroamp has screwed them on parts or anything like that. So if I don't have to put pistons in this truck. I'm reusing my old ones because they're all within spec. But if I were putting them in, especially now that I've actually looked at these side by side, there's no chance I would be buying any pistons to put in this other than the Euroamp pistons. So this actually kind of didn't end up the way I thought it was going to. I really thought all of these were going to be identical, and I was going to tell you, you know, Euroamp, you at least have a warranty, but they really are. I think they're completely different castings. If not, they're definitely different grades of finish on the machine work. So I've got my scale out here. So this is my original piston. My original piston is 371.5 grams. Here is the Euroamp piston with its rings on top. I still have the rings on that one, so I left the rings on this one. This one is 365.6. The Alibaba one is 364.1. So that means that if you're having to do this and get it balanced, you shouldn't have to worry about having to add weight. These are both lighter than what my original one is. This isn't really apples to apples because it's the Supercharged low compression piston, but this one with its rings on it is 332.1 grams. So if you guys are just looking for a reference for what this is to expect it when you order it, that's what that one is. So I think that's good news on all these. Okay guys, so I just checked the diameter of all 8 of these. I had 2 that were 3.640 and 3/4, 2 that were 3.641 and 1/4, and the other 4 were 3.641 exactly. So again, I'm in inches here, so I'll have to convert that over to millimeters, and then I'll throw it up here on the screen. Now I'm going to weigh all of them just to see how consistent those are. And earlier when I weighed these, I left the rings on them because I was comparing them to the factory piston. Now, since I'm just checking variation between them, I have them stripped down completely. So no clips, no pins, no rings. So piston 1. Connecting rod. I don't have any aftermarket ones, but if you guys have connecting rods and you're just wanting to see if they're heavier or lighter, my factory connecting rod here with the big end and the bolts is 588.2 grams. So if you guys are looking at aftermarket connecting rods and you need a weight from this before you get into it, that's what you're at. So this has kind of ended up being another video that didn't really go the way I expected it to. I kind of thought I was going to get in here and show you guys 3 identical pistons, or at the very least 3 identical castings that were like finished machined by different companies. And I don't think the castings are even the same. There is a different, I don't know if I can show it to you the way this is sitting here. On the Supercharged piston, that's a 5. And then here, I think it is a 642 or a 942. I'm guessing that is a carryover from the supercharged pistons that I don't know about because I don't have a supercharged engine. And those casting numbers, I'm sure on these original pistons, it was indicating what forge mold they were using. You know, it's not going to indicate whether they're oversized pistons or anything like that because that has to be machined after the forging, but it's probably just indicating where they all came from, what forge model or what forge design it is and stuff like that. I would guess that when they copied these with the castings in China, they just carried all that stuff over because that's kind of par for the course for how Chinese companies do that. So I don't know if I mentioned, I know I did in the other video, but I don't know if I mentioned it in today's. These are all cast. Any of these that you're getting, any pistons that you're getting for under $500 are cast pistons. The factory originals, as I said earlier, were actually cast pistons from Kolben Schmidt. Kolben Schmidt also offers forged pistons. If you're looking for forged, Molly also has a set that they're adapting over from a Subaru. Velocity AP is offering a set that I think they're having made by CP Carrillo. They're like $7,000, which seems insane for my engine when I'm looking. You know, I can't imagine spending $7,000 on forged internals to put into an engine for a truck that is going to maybe be worth $7,000 when it's running. But that just comes back to the fact that this is a different application than some of these engines are used for. If you're building a track car, then okay, you go drop. It's going to take a lot of money to put into this to make the kind of power that you might be wanting to make. Go for it. If you're talking about in the US, most of these engines live in Land Rovers. They've depreciated so much that there's no way you're ever going to justify putting that kind of money into it unless it's just something that you're throwing money in to play with. I've got to keep this thing on a reasonable budget because it will be really easy for me to spend way more than this truck's worth in parts for an engine that is going into it. And if that's the case, then this truck's not worth being fixed. Then this would have been a complete waste of my time, and I could have put a different engine in it for less than this, or I should have just parted this truck out and bought a different one. So that's why I keep going back to all of these cheaper parts. And I know, so I'm putting 8 pistons in this thing now, not because it necessarily needs them, but because, you know, when I'm looking at the parts that are coming out of this engine, I'm under budget on stuff compared to what I thought I was going to be. And if I was going to go to the next thing on my list to replace something, it would be these pistons because they do have some wear on them. And after I got these and I saw them, I was really impressed with the Euro amp quality and all of the concerns that I had for the regular pistons, not the supercharged pistons. I don't think there's a problem with the Euro amp pistons. That was the eBay piston that I had a problem with. So do your research on it, make sure, but I don't think there's any problem with theirs. But I'm happy with all of the high compression pistons here that go in the naturally aspirated engines. So I went ahead and ordered these, and that's why I'm putting these in there. Not because this truck really needed them. In fact, this truck is pretty... I just realized something. I talked to somebody at Euroamp again today about this piston to wall clearance issue. And he and I, when we were talking about it, both were thinking, we're talking about this in millimeters, even though we were thinking in inches. And he said, so my piston to wall clearance is between 0.30 and 0.33 millimeters. And I was telling him that's under spec because the spec that I have is 0.040 to 0.060 millimeters, but it's not. And I keep doing that math wrong in my head, and I'm talking in 0.3 when the spec is in 0.03. Just a minute. Yeah, I've been measuring, well, I've not been measuring them wrong. I've just been talking about them wrong. So yeah, my clearance is actually quite a bit higher than what the spec is, which is what I expected. And when I talked to Christian today, we were talking about it and I told him, you know, I don't have any, my piston walls look fine. He said, usually when he's working on them, they've been overheated. So there's so much slop that they have to bore them out. And I was telling him, you know, I'm actually under spec on it. And he couldn't believe at 160,000 miles, I would be under spec, but it's because we were talking about 1.5 to 2 thousandths of clearance. But when we were talking about it in metric, that would be 15 thousandths of clearance. All right, so that is, I screwed that up. So I'll have to look and see if that's going to be a problem now, because that is almost enough to go to the plus 1/4 mil pistons and be in clearance now. I don't think I'm going to do that, because I was going to put this thing back together with those, and it was running perfectly fine before. It had really good compression before, so I'm not too worried about it. But I think I might have thrown out some bad information because of that, because I've been having to convert everything from inches to decimals of millimeters, and that's screwed me up a couple times, and I've been talking about this and didn't realize I've done it again. So I apologize for that. I will have to go back and note anywhere that I've done that in the other videos now. But getting back to this, I was pretty happy with how the Euro amp pistons looked, how the finish on them was, what my consistency is with them and everything. So that's why I went ahead and ordered the other 7 to finish this set, just because if I'm moving on to the next thing that needs work on this engine, it's going to be the pistons. And I know that it sounds like sometimes when I get into this stuff, I'm doing a Euro amp commercial, and I promise you guys, they don't know who I am, or if they do, they don't treat me any differently. I've talked to Christian a few times about stuff, because there's such little information about this. I call them to ask what specs they recommend and stuff like that, and I always get put through to the same person, so I'm assuming he's who handles all of their Jag and Rover stuff. But it's not like I'm getting any kickbacks or any discounts or anything like that to talk about Euro amp stuff. It's just that Euro amp is the only company that I've seen anybody talk about that has what seems to be a good reputation. I've not heard anybody talking about Euro amp screwing them on warranty stuff, or them having terrible quality control issues with them or anything like that. Like I have a couple of the other Chinese parts suppliers that are not even really companies. They're all just kind of either drop shippers or subsidiaries of some Chinese company that if you ask them questions, they don't know what you're talking about. They'll tell you to look at your manufacturer specs and stuff like that, because they don't know what this stuff is. They're just somebody that works for answering questions for this company in China. Euroamp actually does know what they're talking about. They do build these engines. They can answer questions on it if you call them and ask them about it, and they're not going to BS you the whole time that you're talking to them about it. They're actually going to be straight with you. At least that's been my experience. So it's not like I'm not trying to funnel everybody to Euroamp. It's just that there's not anybody else that I would trust to buy cheaper parts like this off of in the US that I think is going to back up their product like they do. So with that, I think that's pretty much all I've got for today. That was kind of a lot of information to throw in here all at once, but this just kind of came together the way that it did, and I just kind of made it work as I was going. So I think that's it for right now. Thanks, guys.